In today's show, a mass stabbing on a UK train. Food aid for 40 million Americans could be back this week, and why half the English speaking world is named Smith. Plus, President Trump reignites attacks on Ilhan Omar. Yale expels a student for faking her identity. And garlic might make you smell better? I'll explain. And here's today's trivia question. What is the only U.S. state name you can type using just one row of a keyboard? I bet all of you are looking down at your keyboard right now. Don't worry, I'll tell you at the end of the show. It's Monday, November 2nd. This is the Flyover Podcast. Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts. Good morning and welcome back to the Flyover Podcast. I'm your weekday host, Ayla Brown. If you usually watch on YouTube or Spotify, today's episode is audio only. I'm recording on the go after picking up my kids from my very loving, patient, and kind parents who watched our boys this weekend while my husband and I went to the Patriots game. I'll break down all the big NFL matchups a little later in the show, but first, happy Monday. Let's take off with today's biggest headlines. A train in the UK turned into a crime scene Saturday night after a man with a knife attacked passengers on a London-bound train near Huntingdon, injuring 11 people, 2 of them critically. Police say the suspect is a 32-year-old British man who was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after armed officers boarded the train. A member of the rail staff who stepped in to stop the attack is now in life-threatening condition, and investigators say his actions, quote, undoubtedly saved people's lives. Witnesses said the attacker moved from car to car, slashing at people, and one passenger said he told her, quote, the devil's not going to win, before leaving her alone. UK officials are asking the public to stay calm as they piece together what happened in what's being called a rare mass stabbing. There's also some movement on food assistance. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Sunday that SNAP benefits, the program that helps about 40 million Americans buy groceries, could restart as early as Wednesday. Payments for November have been held up because of the ongoing government shutdown as 2 federal judges on Friday ordered the administration to fix it as soon as possible. Bessent said the White House is working on how to legally free up the $9.2 billion needed to make those November payments, even as it keeps pushing Democrats to pass a bill to reopen the government. And here's a lighter one to end on. A global look at last names found something kind of fun. In English-speaking countries like the US, Canada, the UK, and Australia, Smith is still the most common surname, mostly because it started as an occupational name. In a lot of other places, the most popular names come from ancestors like Andersson in Sweden or Hernandez in Mexico. Some of the meanings are very specific. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the most common name, Ilunga, means someone who forgives the first 2 offenses but not the third. And in Finland, the top surname, Korhonen, which basically translates to old, hard-of-hearing person or big, clumsy man. See the last name map in the show notes below. It might help you answer today's poll question at the end of the episode. Here are your top political headlines. Early voter turnout in the New York City mayoral race is surging so fast that pollster Adam Carlson of Zenith Research says Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani could reach 1 million votes on Election Day, a mark not hit since 1969. The boost is being driven by unusually strong early voting numbers across all 5 boroughs, already near 500,000 ballots cast in just the first week. A 9-month review by the nonprofit Democracy Matters found that 6 in 10 working-class voters view the Democratic Party negatively, describing it as woke, weak, and out of touch. The report adds that many working-class voters feel disconnected from what they say are elite-driven priorities at the national party level. And new polling shows Donald Trump's job approval rating among white voters has dropped to 47% approval and 50% disapproval, the lowest white voter approval he's received in his second term. The slide is especially notable because white voters have long been a key part of his support base, and such shifts could have broader implications heading into the 2026 midterms. Here are some podcast extra stories. President Trump is once again targeting Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, posting on Truth Social that, quote, she should go back, referencing her Somali heritage. The post included a video of Omar speaking, though it's unclear when it was recorded. Omar, who's been a U.S. citizen since 2000, brushed it off in a radio interview saying, quote, I'm grown. I could go live wherever I want. This isn't the first time President Trump has made those comments. He made similar remarks during his presidency and even claimed in September that Somalia's president refused to take Omar back. At Yale University, a student who went by the name Katharina Lynn has been expelled after the school discovered she fabricated her entire identity to get in. Investigators say she pretended to be the daughter of farmers from rural North Dakota, when in reality, she grew up in California's Bay Area. Reports say she even changed her name to appear less Chinese American and wrote a fake backstory for her application, believing that, quote, an Asian kid with average grades would have little chance of getting into Yale. Experts say cases like this expose weaknesses in college admissions vetting and could even open the door to academic fraud or foreign influence risks. And finally, your diet might be changing more than just your health. It could affect how you smell. A new study found that foods rich in sulfur, like garlic and cruciferous vegetables, may make your breath worse, but your natural body scent more pleasant. Researchers found that men who ate lots of fruits, vegetables, and healthy fats were rated as having sweeter and more attractive body odor compared to those who ate mostly carbs. On the other hand, diets high in meat and alcohol made scent less appealing. Though interestingly, beer drinkers seemed more attractive to mosquitoes. Still to come, SpaceX pushes closer to commercial space living, a humanitarian crisis in Sudan. And how much money does it take to be considered upper class? The answer depends on your generation and the economy. But first, thanks to Native Path Hydrate, most of us know hydration is key for nearly every function of the body, but 75% of Americans still don't drink enough water each day. And as we age, our bodies naturally lose some ability to stay hydrated, especially without help from added electrolytes. That's where Native Path Hydrate comes in. It's not your average drink mix. This formula is packed with BCAAs and all 9 essential amino acids to support muscle recovery, energy, and overall vitality. Plus, it's 100% natural, sugar-free, and made without artificial flavors, colors, or dyes. Each serving is just 5 calories, and every order is backed by a full 365-day money-back guarantee. So you can try it completely risk-free. Head to nativehydrate.com/flyover to learn more and see what Native Path Hydrate can do for your health. Once again, that's nativehydrate.com/flyover, or click the link in today's show notes for all of the information. In finance, a new survey comparing how different generations view wealth found that most boomers and millennials consider a $100,000 annual salary to be upper class, while Gen Z puts that number closer to around $75,000. Economists say the gap highlights how inflation, housing costs, and debt are shaping younger Americans' perception of financial success. Meanwhile, more than 100 companies have filed notices this month announcing plans for mass layoffs in November. The filings indicate thousands of workers could lose their jobs ahead of the holidays, with industries like tech, manufacturing, and retail among the hardest hit. And a nationwide penny shortage is happening earlier than expected after the Trump administration officially ended U.S. penny production in May. Many retailers are now rounding transactions to the nearest 5 cents, a shift economists say could save the government millions in minting costs each year, but is also causing confusion at cash registers. Here's what's happening beyond our borders. A communications blackout and new satellite images are revealing the staggering scale of violence in El Fasher, Sudan. Experts say tens of thousands of civilians have reportedly been killed by RSF forces in what could be the final and most devastating chapter of Darfur's long-running genocide. Human rights groups are calling for immediate international intervention as access to the region remains nearly impossible. In Italy, tragedy struck the Ortler Alps when an avalanche killed 5 German climbers, including a father and his 17-year-old daughter, as they were ascending Cima Vertana. Rescue teams faced poor visibility and dangerous conditions while recovering the victims, and authorities are warning hikers about continued instability in the area. And prosecutors in France now say the dramatic $102 million jewel heist at the Louvre wasn't the work of an elite international syndicate after all, but a crew of petty criminals from Paris's suburbs. Investigators uncovered a trail of sloppy mistakes, missing jewels, and at least one suspect still on the run, suggesting this heist of the century may have been far less professional than it first appeared. Let's start sports with an NFL recap. It was a wild Sunday across the NFL. The Patriots edged the Falcons 24-23 for their 6th straight win, thanks to rookie QB Drake May's 2 touchdowns, while Atlanta's Michael Penix Jr. threw 3 scores but missed an extra point that cost them the game. In Denver, the Broncos rallied past the Texans 18-15 as Bo Nix led a late drive to set up a game-winning field goal after C.J. Stroud exited with a concussion. The 49ers topped the Giants 34-24 with Christian McCaffrey breaking an NFL record after racking up 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. In Chicago, rookie Caleb Williams threw a stunning 58-yard touchdown with 17 seconds left to beat the Bengals 47-42. And the Vikings squeaked past the Lions 27-24 with J.J. McCarthy scoring 3 times. For all football scores and highlights, head to today's show notes. Next, Helen Ibiri made history at the New York City Marathon on Sunday, setting a new women's record with a time of 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 51 seconds. On the men's side, Benson Kipruto took home the win after edging out Alexander Mituso Manyao just by 0.16 seconds, one of the closest finishes this race has ever seen. In college football, Colorado head coach Deion Sanders shut down post-game media access after the Buffaloes' 52-17 loss to Arizona. He told reporters, "Come at me," taking full responsibility for the team's performance and saying he didn't want his players or assistants blamed. And in the NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies have suspended guard Ja Morant for 1 game for conduct detrimental to the team. The decision came after a heated exchange with head coach Thomas Isalo following Friday's 117-112 loss to the Lakers. In science and technology, SpaceX successfully launched 18 satellites early Sunday morning from Cape Canaveral, Florida, as part of its Bandwagon 4 mission. Among them was the Haven Demo, a test module designed for a future commercial space station. The mission marks another step toward expanding private operations in low Earth orbit as NASA shifts focus toward deep space exploration. And a new study on first-time fathers found that 2 distinct brain systems are at work during parenting. One that processes daily emotional stress, and the other that drives long-term purpose and fulfillment. Researchers say that balance may explain why being a parent can feel both overwhelming and deeply rewarding at the same time. If this sounds interesting to you, we've linked it in the show notes below. Here's a few other stories to leave you with today. The famous clock tower penthouse in New York's Tribeca, a 3-story, 8,770 square foot triplex built around a working 19th century clock tower, is officially under contract after being listed for $19.25 million. In France, a 77-year-old man survived 3 days trapped in a 130-foot ravine after falling off his bike on his way home from the supermarket. With no food or water, he reportedly relied only on red wine he'd purchased earlier to stay hydrated until rescuers found him. And in Russia, a factory worker is facing legal trouble after refusing to return $87,000 that was accidentally deposited into his account due to a payroll glitch. Thinking it was a surprise year-end bonus, he used the money to buy a car and relocate. But his employer says the cash was meant to be split among 34 other workers. Just out of curiosity, would you have given the money back or not? The comment section is always open. All right, we've made it to the poll questions. Here's the results from yesterday. Do you share a birthday with a famous person? 47% said no, 38% said yes, and 15% of you said, I am famous. Wow, thank you to everyone who voted. My birthday is July 28th, and I share a birthday with actress Lori Loughlin, CEO of the UFC Dana White, and rapper Soulja Boy. And here's today's poll question. We were talking about last names earlier in the show. So what kind of last name do you have? Do you have an occupational last name like Smith? An ancestral last name like Johnson? Geographical like York? Descriptive like Brown? Or other? Maybe you're not sure. Well, for me, there's no doubt about it that my last name is named after a color. So because my last name is Brown, I will be voting descriptive. I can't wait to read your answers in tomorrow's show, and you can vote right in the show notes below. In today's trivia question, what is the only U.S. state name that you can type using just one row on a keyboard? The answer? Alaska. Alaska is the only U.S. state whose name can be typed entirely using just one row of letters on a standard QWERTY keyboard. So now you know, if you're listening to the podcast on your desk, look down and you will be correct. You can spell Alaska on that middle keyboard. That is all for today's episode of the Flyover podcast. Thanks so much for listening. And don't forget, we've got 9 state editions of the Flyover that you can subscribe to absolutely free. Florida, Texas, Virginia, Colorado, Tennessee, Ohio, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. Just head to jointheflyover.com to sign up for the national newsletter and your local edition so you can stay caught up on the news wherever you live. I'll be back in the studio tomorrow with more great headlines and stories to keep you informed. Have a great day. Thanks for flying with us.